Okay, thank you DNC for hosting us. My name is Jake Seegers, and I'm running for Clallam County Commissioner because I want our kids and our grandkids to have the opportunity to stay here or return to this place that we all love. When they come back, I want them to have economic opportunity. I want them to have clean and safe places. I want them to be able to afford their own home. My top priority is public safety because public safety is the foundation for everything. Failed policies have made Clallam County a destination for homelessness and substance abuse. We need a new culture in county government. We need to start measuring the outcomes that we all want. Graduation from addiction into recovery and from homelessness into self-sufficiency. My second priority is economic development. If we want a strong economy, we need public safety. Businesses need to understand that their investment will be protected. I'm also committed to fiscal responsibility. If we want to balance the county's budget, we need public safety to decrease the huge cost of crime, homelessness, and substance abuse. We also need economic growth to spread out the tax burden on a broader base. I will steward every taxpayer dollar by asking two simple questions. Is it essential, and is it effective? Finally, I'm committed to affordability. If we want affordability, we need to balance the county's budget so taxpayers get to keep more money in their pockets. We need economic growth so that we have family wage jobs and they can afford more. All of this comes back to the foundation, which is public safety. I'm running to restore public safety, economic growth, fiscal responsibility, affordability, and trust in our local government. I'm running to return common sense to local leadership. Thank you.
All right. I was born and raised in this community, and I'm committed to making sure that our community members can have the same opportunities that I have. When I was young, opportunities existed for me. My wife and I worked hard. We seized those opportunities, and we got ahead. And I want that story to be possible for every resident of Clallam County. I've been in public office for about 8.5 years here in Clallam County. 5 years as city council member, 4 years on the Clallam County Commission. And during that time, I've been focused on finding long-term solutions to some of the most intractable problems that we face. How do we build more housing? How do we make sure that we have more good jobs for the residents of Clallam County so that our communities can thrive? As a first-time commissioner, I led a regional team that called our North Olympic Recompete Coalition that advocated for that proposed a strategic plan for our region in the pursuit of a federal grant called the Recompete Pilot Project. With that strategic plan, we proposed a series of public investments in infrastructure and industry innovation and our workforce. And we successfully brought back $40 million of economic development and workforce development funding to improve our community, to create new good jobs and connect our residents to those good jobs. Serving on the Port Angeles City Council, I was one of the key leaders advocating for common sense housing reform so that we can build more housing in Port Angeles. 6 to 8 years later, you can see what those housing reforms look like. You can drive around Port Angeles, see duplex construction, ADU construction, innovative new housing types, and just a block away, a 36-unit apartment building opening up later this year. As the Clallam County Commissioner, I've been a practical voice on the commission, advocating for common sense, combining my business background, my community connections, strong intergovernmental relationships, and collaborative leadership styles. So no matter if it's policy making, planning and delivering large-scale projects, or constituent service. Sorry, one last thing. Fine. Thank you. Apologize.
Now, Jake, you'll have.
Is then we take that funding, we give it to NGOs in order for them to solve the problems, and the problems never get solved. We don't have any metrics to actually measure the outcomes that we want. And so, you know, Recompete, we've got tons of overhead. Olympic Community of Health is getting 10 million, and 10% of that, $1 million, is an overhead. NODC's got another $1.2 million in overhead. Clallam County is charging $3.2 million to oversee Recompete. So right off the bat, we've got $5 to $6 million that are just going to overhead. Thank you.
I'm eager to get to questions.
All right, with that, we'll start with the first pre-submitted question. Candidates, this is about RV use ordinance. Clallam has a severe housing shortage. The new RV use ordinance affects RVs, park models, accessory dwelling units, and cottage housing. What zoning changes or provisions would you support to encourage some of these housing options, assuming they don't impact environmental health or human safety?
You want to go first?
Mike will go first this time.
Sure. So the RV use ordinance is a great example of how we can provide more flexibility to people that are living in Clallam County and find a balance between life safety and health considerations and the reality on the ground, which is that people are being pressed into, you know, lower quality housing based on the economics of our region. And so this is something that came through our planning commission. You know, I would say that my position is we want flexibility. We want more options for everyone. The housing spectrum that we see, like I said, pushes people into homelessness, and many of the times RVs or tiny homes are one of the only options for people to escape that. So Clallam County, I think, put forward this RV ordinance to make sure that we could have a placement permit for tiny homes, which we passed in 2024, and to make sure that we had some reasonable regulations to ensure that we weren't going to see a sustained increase in derelict RVs on the street, but we were going to have some boundaries to protect people from, you know, abusive situations or unsafe living conditions, while recognizing that it's a reality of the world that permanent living in RVs is the only option for some people. I think there's ways to balance both of those things. I think our planning commission is working through that and came up with some really great solutions. And while we do that, we should take on whatever we can to make sure that other interesting and unique housing options are available, especially in our urban growth areas.
everyone in this room knows friends and family that have moved from here because they can't afford to live here. So when it comes to RV ordinances, tiny homes, vacation rentals, I've definitely been pushing towards property rights on this. That people have the option to increase their revenue because they have property that's an asset. So I would like to see 2 vacation rentals allowed per parcel. Only 1 is allowed right now, and that doesn't matter if you have a half an acre parcel or a 30-acre parcel. So that needs to be evaluated. I would like to see vacation rentals allowed for RVs. The more options that we give property owners, the more units will come to the market. And that doesn't really matter if it's a vacation rental unit or a long-term rental unit. It's more units, it's more supply for the same amount of demand. And that is what we need. For people to stay here, they need options to get more revenue coming in. Sometimes it's just not enough to try to make it work on their own. So that's definitely what I'm pushing for. I want to make sure that property rights are protected. The other issue with RVs in particular is there was a proposed limit for 30 days to park an RV somewhere that's not hooked up to septic. We don't want sewage spilling out anywhere, but we do want people to have the opportunity, if they're just using an RV as an extra bedroom and they have, facilities inside that the people that are living in the RV are staying in, to have that opportunity. So I would like to see that kept. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with Jake this time. Jake, this is a question from the audience. What are your main campaign contributors?
Financially, I would have to ask my campaign manager. Jeff is a top contributor. Glenn, who's sitting over here, he has sold thousands of dollars of peanut brittle for the campaign. So he's one of the top contributors. I've had some family members donate. There's a gentleman, I won't name him, in public here, but there's a gentleman in town that donated the rent on the billboard that we have. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent money on that. We just had to pay for the vinyl. So he did that with multiple contributors. That's off the top of my head.
Thank you. Mike?
So when I ran my campaign in 2022, I was the largest contributor personally. This campaign, I think my parents have max donated, and I plan on most of the funding coming from myself personally, although I accept donations from many people. So I have had some community members who have graciously donated, but my assumption is that I will be the main contributor.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Alan, do we have a Zoom question? Okay, we'll move on to the pre-submitted questions. This question has to do with tribal relations, and this goes first to Mike. With 6 tribes in our county, please comment on what you think their contributions provide to Clallam County in jobs, culture, healthcare, racial gender equality, and democracy.
Well, I think you just listed many of them right there. So I think it's really important for us as a county government to have strong relationships with our tribal partners. They are sovereign nations. They signed treaties with the United States government, and our Constitution says that those treaties are the supreme law of the land. This is settled federal law. We have strong conservatives and liberals on our Supreme Court that back that. So we should strive to have strong, respectful relationships with our tribal neighbors. I think I have done that. I brought all 5 of the federally recognized tribes in our 2-county region into our Recompete project, where they are, they have membership on our stakeholder committee, our leadership committee, and we're active with projects from the beginning. I think that having tribes brings massive cultural value. It teaches us about our history, it teaches us about how to care for the land. We can look at them to say, we have the Makah tribe that has a sustainable forestry initiative. What can we learn from tribal forestry and apply that to state or federal or private forestry in our region? Because they have a much longer history in our region, learning and doing those things. I think tribes are strong economic partners, creating jobs, often in areas where the private sector, isn't really as involved. And a great example of that is the Jamestown tribe stepping up and filling a huge gap in medical services years ago in the swim area, and then doing it again recently with the Jamestown Healing Clinic, which is a huge treatment resource that is saving lives, that I think has stood up against the criticism that a lot of people brought against it when it was first proposed, and is making a huge difference in our region, especially with the mobile RV unit out to the west end.
I think it's important to establish trust with all the tribes. I think there's a lot of, there can be some friction in the way that our county interacts with tribal government and vice versa. I want to represent every single one of our citizens equally. I've reached out to all the tribes to have a time with them, to just listen to council and see what their concerns are. I met with TJ Green out at McCaw, and we spent 3 hours together and had a very productive conversation. What can we learn? I mean, Jamestown Corporation is killing it. I mean, they are doing well. They are showing us what can happen when you reduce fees, taxes, and regulation. And I think it's a great example of what we as county leaders can offer the entire public, tribes included.
Thank you. Next question is from the audience. Jake, we'll start with you. What do people need to do to stop the Wayne development between Squim and Lynn?
I am going to say I don't know what people can do to stop that development. That's something that I need to look into a lot more. I have had some discussions, but I don't know the details on how it would be stopped.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna make a little bit of a maybe bold statement here, and I'm not sure we need to stop it is my answer. Talking about the housing spectrum, we have affordable housing where the county's made some big investments like the apartment building. That's for 60% of AMI, area median income folks or less. We have what we call missing middle, which is what I spent a lot of my time at the Provincial City Council trying to encourage: duplexes, ADUs, other creative housing types. And then we have market rate housing. My position is we need more housing for all of our neighbors. If someone comes into our area and says, I want to build market rate, high-end housing, I say, I'm okay with that. Let's make sure that the impacts are fair. Let's make sure that we have the water resources where you want to build it, that you're applying, the zoning correctly. But I'm a yes to housing. And that's my position since I've been on the city council or above. So with regards to the specific Squim development, I think they're still working through that process. The Squim City Council and the Squim government, they should follow the law, they should follow their rules. I think that's something we learned from the Jamestown Healing Center. There are zoning rules. When developers follow them, they should be able to do what the zoning says they can do with their private property. If they're not following them, that's where the public needs to step up and say, hey, wait, that's a foul. So I think with that one, water resources are going to be a big part of, can they sustain this development? What is the infrastructure cost? One last point I'll make is the developer should pay for that infrastructure cost. The general public should not be the ones that are on the hook for making sure that they have sufficient water or wastewater. The developer is the one that's how it's supposed to work. So I'm not sure we need to stop it. I think we should always pay attention, but I'm for housing for all different incomes.
Thank you. So now the next question is a pre-submitted question regarding healthcare. Mike, we'll start with you. Since the commissioners manage and distribute local tax funds through partnerships with providers for mental health and addiction services, what policy changes would you encourage and at what funding level?
So the Clallam County Commissioners are really involved with behavioral health in a lot of different ways. I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time talking about all those different ways, but I think it's really important for us to have good relationships with our provider networks, be engaged on these issues. I think the number one thing Clallam County can do in all of these areas is be the convener. Be the place where we bring together all the different people that are working on that issue and make sure we're actually being strategic with how we're spending, to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, to make sure that we're covering all the different needs that our community has. That's something that I do as the chair of the Board of Health, bringing in our hospital district and our hospital commissioner or CEOs to say, what's going on with Forks Community Hospital? What's going on with Olympic Medical Center? And I think that's something we do at the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, working with the treatment community to say, what are the gaps? We're working through that process right now on opioid settlement funding, where our Attorney General, went out and fought for millions of dollars from the people that caused the opioid epidemic by lying to doctors and lying to the public and selling unsafe drugs to people that were addictive. And we've recovered that money from them. We're going to redeploy it at the local and state level. But we want to be strategic in how we do it. So I think Clallam County should be the convener to make sure that we're bringing all those people together, retaining those good relationships, and finding the strategic things. We're never going to be the one that's delivering those services. That's what the providers do best. We should let them do that work.
Last year, we spent $100,000 of opioid settlement funds to purchase drug use supplies that SAM-HSA at the federal level defunded. So I would stop that. Harm reduction should go back to 1-for-1 syringe exchange and Narcan. And it's only Narcan because we have created an atmosphere with if we take that away, people are going to die tomorrow because we have been facilitating drug use. The other thing that I would change is we gave $2 million to PVH for the Northview project, which is just 36 units. That $2 million, we actually gave them 4, but I'm just talking about the behavioral health funds because that was the question. That's $55,000 per unit, just for the $2 million that came out of behavioral health. Joe DeScala is building transitional housing for about half of that. We need more transitional housing. We don't need permanent supportive housing that's $350,000 to $500,000 a unit. It's not a cost-effective solution to housing. Mike wants to bring more units to the market. I believe that it needs to be transitional. It needs to be shelter because we need to provide individuals an opportunity for shelter, treatment, recovery, and a path to the workplace. And that doesn't need to be a $350,000 studio apartment.
Could we go another round on this or question?
The candidates have asked for a 1-minute rebuttal. Are you okay with that, Jay?
But I'm okay with this.
Okay, 1-minute rebuttal.
So I just want to bring up one thing. This actually came up when I ran 4 years ago against the former Commissioner Peach. And people asked, where we disagreed. And one thing I said was, I think that the commissioners investing in a doubling of the size of their Serenity House shelter was actually the wrong investment. And I think 4 years later, or 5, it's probably been 5 or 6 years since they did that. I think I've been proven right. Shelter is actually not helpful in transitioning people out of homelessness. Transitional housing and temporary housing are. I think we agree on that. I love the tiny homes. I love placing people. We have Ole Cap operates one in Jefferson County, and I'm a huge supporter of the 4K. I don't think shelter capacity does that. I think people decompensate at the shelter and their problems generally get worse. I think that what we need are cheap housing units to purpose people into. I don't think that's what Peninsula Behavioral Health is doing at Northview. I think they're actually working on a kind of a different income group, generally speaking. But I don't think that more shelter capacity is actually helpful in transitioning people out of homelessness. And I just also wanted to say, we're seeing a huge de-investment at the federal level in a lot of these services. So there's a reason that the county likes to step up and fill that gap. And I think that's what we should do.
Yes, Greg?
At the federal level, we're seeing reinvestment into shelter and transitional housing starting in 2027. HUD is going to flip the game on that, and everybody in town is worried. Everybody that's permanent supportive housing. I agree with Mike. He disagreed that we shouldn't expand shelter capacity, and I agree. Our shelter isn't the effective solution. There are shelters that work very well. There's a shelter in Longview that has metrics and expectations and accountability for their users that has a 95% success rate. So it's our shelter is the problem. We need to revitalize our shelter to make it an attractive option for people that are living outside. If everybody outside says, what would I do if I couldn't live outside? And they say, heck no, I wouldn't go to Serenity House. There's a problem. We need to change that. We have capacity here, and if we can fix it, we've got a big tool.
Thank you. Next question. We will start with Jake on this question. This is from the audience. Any plans for hiring more police officers for street patrol in town?
We need more law enforcement. If you look at the county budget, this is rough numbers. You can ask for the numbers after this if you want the exact, but since 2019, we increased our expenses by 51%. Bellevue CPI went up by 26%. Our taxes, meaning sales tax and property tax, increased 39%. So we outperformed inflation. On top of that, we got $16 million more in grant funding during that time. We've spent it all. We're negative. We are negative. And so, do we need more officers? Yes. During that time, we only spent 26% more in law enforcement. So that was less than inflation, and it was less than everything else. We doubled on environmental conservation and many other things, health services that have not worked. So I would be a very big proponent in bringing on more deputies. I would like our deputies to work on the issues that are in Tumwater Creek, downtown, in all of our spaces, to work with local PD to fix these problems and to clean up our streets, make them safe again. And we need more capacity. The sheriff says it all the time. He doesn't have enough deputies. We have the lowest concentration in deputies per capita here in this county than pretty much anywhere in the nation. So we do need a lot more law enforcement, and I would definitely support that. Thank you.
So I have really good relationships with all of our law enforcement leaders here on the peninsula, and I think we're really well served by them. I served on the board of directors of the Olympic Peninsula Community Clinic with Deputy Chief Jason Vieta from the city of Port Angeles. That's, our deputy chief serving on a social service nonprofit because he believes in the mission of that social service nonprofit. Also on that board was Chief Criminal Deputy Amy Bundy from Clallam County. So we have actually really good leadership in our sheriff and a lot of our police chiefs. And what they have helped us do is make huge investments in behavioral health, in co-response and navigation services to give police more tools in their toolbox to go out and do interventions with mental health and substance use and those issues and homelessness. Where we haven't made any investments is on the police officer side. The city of Port Angeles announced that they're looking into more revenue from a new sales tax officer from the state to hire 4 new police officers. I think that's a sound decision. We have good leadership that cares about the right things, that is working well with our social service providers, that is working well with our nonprofits. And I feel very comfortable that raising their level of officers per capita is going to be a worthwhile investment that will increase public safety. I think Clallam County should do the same thing. We have that same sales tax option to raise sales tax by 0.1% of 1%. I would support that. And I would make investments in OpNet, which is high-level drug enforcement to go after dealers, to go after people that are bringing drugs into our community and destroying lives. I think that's what Clallam County should do. We should show that leadership. We should make sure that we have the right law enforcement resources to match the behavioral health investments that we've made over the last decade.
Thank you. Jake? Okay, we've covered that. The next question is from Zoom. How to pivot from clear-cut forest and export mode to forest management and jobs manufacturing lumber locally made?
Great question about natural resources and how we use them as a region. So I think a lot of that transition is actually already underway. Possibly partly because of shifts in markets where you just don't see log ships being, exporting logs from our port really anymore. I think they had 1 ship last year. And partly because of changes in ownership of the land. One of our largest private landowners in Clallam County, Rainier, which was a really intensive manager that managed for very short rotations and exported a lot of logs, sold a lot of their land to EFM, which is a more ecological manager that is really interested in working with Clallam County on things like trails. So I think we have a great public land manager in the Department of Natural Resources. I think they do climate smart forestry. I support their efforts. I think their management style meets a lot of environmental and ecological standards. I appreciate all the citizens that are standing up and saying we need to verify that and ensure that they're doing that. And the other thing I'll say on this is a lot of our recompete investment is focused on industry innovation to make sure we have industrial symbiosis. So we're not just harvesting lumber and shipping it out, but that we have products at each stage of development. So if there's an off product that's caused by a mill, that becomes a product in a new process to actually produce real products. So we're focused in investing in a lot of that industry innovation. We have good land management from DNR. They're very responsive and transparent. We meet with them quarterly on a regular basis. I don't think their process is perfect, but I think their intent is good. And we have some local activists that are always pushing to make sure that our community standards are being met by our public forestry, and I do appreciate that.
I think that the timber industry is doing a good job. I think that Washington State is the most environmentally conscious green state in the country. So we've already taken a lot of steps. I like what CRTC is doing. I know Mike's worked with them, bringing hemlock out from macaw and hopefully making housing, making some other products with it. I think that's great. Keep it on the peninsula. Make a value added product on the timber that's here to export out at a higher level. When it comes to EFM and the Rainier properties, I don't agree with Mike that that's positive. We have taken over 50,000 acres of private property out of private space and into conservation. We have less than 500,000 acres of privately owned property in the county. So we've effectively, in the last 5 years, we've taken out 11% of the capacity of our land. That increases the cost of our land. That increases the cost of our housing. That decreases affordability. So yeah, when EFM took 37,000 acres into conservation, I'm not a fan of that. I have a friend that mentioned that we need to manage the forest floor, what can be grown on the forest floor, and use that as a revenue source. And I think ideas like that are great ideas to add to the value of timber and how we manage the forests.
Thank you. Next question will be starting with Jake. We're moving on to homeless issues. This question says, give us your definition of housing first and describe what it means to you to hold unhoused people accountable. If elected, what policies do you think will help decrease the homeless population in Clallam County?
Okay. Housing first just means you get a house before anything else. You don't have any accountability. You don't have to go through treatment. You don't need to commit to treatment. You don't need to commit to services. We just give you a house and supposedly that solves all your problems. That doesn't happen. I've met so many people that have said, I've been in that situation. I destroyed the house. I just kept using drugs and trashed the place. So housing first doesn't work. It's very, very expensive. The most recent proposals are $500,000 per unit. We can't afford to build housing first in this county. What do? We need to end the option to live outside. Bottom line, we need to prioritize local housing for local people. We have 4,500 individuals on the waiting list for housing in this county, but there's only 300 individuals on the point in time count, and 176 of them live outside. We're obviously not prioritizing only people from here that are living here, physically present. We need to strengthen the shelter policies. We already talked about that. Expand transitional shelter. Reduce the cash flow that fuels addiction. So we need signs that tell folks, hey, don't give to panhandlers, but here's a QR code and you can give to organizations that will actually help. We need to redirect the drug use supply funding to OpNet. I agree with Mike on that, and co-response systems like Operation Shielding Hope. And we need to measure success by actual outcomes, transitioning from addiction into recovery and from homelessness into self-sufficiency.
All right, so the questions were, what is my understanding of Housing First? So Housing First is a strategy. It is a strategy that was first advocated by the George W. Bush administration in housing. And the strategy basically said there are people that have a lot of problems in their life. They've a lot of things they need to do to get to the point where they're what we would consider a contributing citizen. It's hard, it's almost impossible for them to do all of those things at once. And so if we put them into a housing unit, that solves one of the major fundamental needs that all humans have, and then we can work with them on solving the other problems. I think it's one strategy. I don't think it's the only strategy that works. I think there's many strategies that work. And I think we have examples of working well on the North Philippine Peninsula, and we have examples of working really poorly. And in my mind, what matters is how good are you doing intensive case management? How good are you at actually being with that person and supporting them and working to solve those problems? If you're doing like my opponent said, just throwing them into a housing unit and walking away, that doesn't work. We have an example of that with the Tempest here in Port Angeles that was managed by Serenity House. I think that's a travesty. I think intensive case management is the answer to whether or not those kind of programs work. The other question was, how do we decrease homelessness? The cost of housing has a direct relationship to how much homelessness you have. Reducing the cost of housing is our best bet to reducing homelessness. Improving the quality of the actual system is the next best thing we can do. That's again where Clallam County can be a convener, can be strategic. I've advocated for these kind of policies since I was in public office, working with leaders to work on the coordinated entry system to make sure Serenity House was actually doing good work. They've had a transition in leadership in the past 5 or so years, and I think they're doing a much better work. I see my time's up, so I'm going to pause, but thank you.
Another 30 seconds on that.
You agree to another 30 seconds?
How do we reduce homelessness here? I kind of missed part of that, but we have spent our $16 million of extra grant money mostly on services. We have an abundance of services here. I talk to folks outside and they say this is the most amazing place to be homeless. We are attracting homelessness here. We need to change that. I met a gentleman at the bus stop and I was talking with him. He hitchhiked all the way from Texas to come visit Olympic National Park. He was trying to get me to pay for a hotel for the night so that he could go up to Olympic National Park. And I said, dude, it's like right up the street. He came all the way here because he heard the services are great. So we need to have more accountability, not just freebies.
Your enthusiasm. We're pleased to ask you to hold your applause until the end.
I'll just say again, the way we decrease homelessness is by making sure that we have a system that quickly transitions people from homelessness into being housed, and we have cheap housing units in which to place them. You can have all the shelter capacity you want. If there's not a housing unit for someone to go into, they will remain at the shelter. Many of them remain there for over a year. They will decompensate. They will gain more mental health issues. They will gain more substance use issues. You need the cheap housing unit. That's what matters. We need to be much better at developing cheap housing units on the North Olympic Peninsula. That's the work that I've been trying to be engaged in my entire life in public office.
Thank you. We have a question on Zoom. Would you support new wording in contracts with the county that would require any NGO that receives taxpayer funds to disclose spending of said funds?
I think we already have that language. I think all of the contracts that we have with all of our service providers have a very clear scope of work that says, here's the work you're doing, here's how you're going to get paid, here's how, here's what you're going to get paid. I think all that transparency already exists. And I would say that I think that's just, I think that we already have that in place. And I'd be happy to show anyone how those contracts are formed. We go through a public process where we invite people, when the county has money that they want to put on the table for a specific purpose. We have a open request for proposals that's scored openly. All of these are public documents that people can see. And then when we contract with that provider, we have that detailed scope of work that says, here's the work you're going to do, here's what you're going to get paid for.
I'd just like to say, for our last topic, the only affordable housing units in this county anymore are existing housing units. So there is no affordable housing units going forward. Absolutely, I would. If an NGO wants to take money from the county, they want funding, they should have to disclose financial reports and they should have to perform metrics. We have a scope of work, but the scope of work never defines the outcome that we want. It just how many inputs, how many beds were filled, how many syringes were given out. We never actually have a scope of work that gets us to the outcomes. So yes, I absolutely support more accountability. If you're taking money from the county, you have financial transparency. You commit to it. You don't want it, don't take the money. If you want the money, you need to show within each time increment, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, that you are producing measurable results. And if you're not, sorry, no more funding. Move on.
Thank you. Next question. This question will start with Jake. This is from the audience. What is the number one thing that Clallam County needs? And what would you as county commissioner do to meet that need?
100% public safety. What do we do to meet that need? We need to enforce the ordinances that are on the books. And that includes the city of Port Angeles, unfortunately. So that's under their jurisdiction. But I do believe that the county, through the health department, under RCW 70-05-060 and 70-05-067 or 070 has the authority to step in and abate public health nuisances if the city does not do it on their property. They have the right for private landowners, for public landowners, for the port, and we need to invoke that. I am still trying to figure out, I've been trying to reach Jay Reno at the prosecutor's office to figure out why he is advising the health department to not do this. This is an emergency on Tumwater Creek. This is an environmental emergency. The Democratic Party is all about environmentalism. We should care what's happening on Tumwater Creek. Have you gone and looked at it? It's an emergency, and we need the health officer to step up and say, we're going to take action, we're going to clean this up, and we are going to make our public spaces safe and clean again, and that's the bottom line.
What's the number one thing that Clallam County needs? My answer would be family wage jobs. We need economic opportunity for all of our citizens so that we can see families thrive and communities thrive. Job creation, I think, has been one of my the things that I've worked on the most. And I would say the thing that the public sector can do at the county level for that, number one was our recompete grant. Getting our leaders together, getting all of the different governments, tribes, the ports, everything together and say, what are the big strategies that we need to invest in? We came up with things like barging to solve transportation issues because it's a barrier for industry. That's been on the port's to-do list for 10 years. We found a way to get funding for it. So, our recompete investment, investing in our workforce, every strong economy is built on a strong workforce. That's something that I think we can look back through in American history and realize. The successes that we had post-World War II is because we had the strongest workforce in the world. The second thing that the public sector can do to support economic development is infrastructure. And I have been someone who has been really open-minded about how do we get more, infrastructure on the ground that supports job creation, that supports, it's boring stuff like sewers, it's boring stuff like water mains. We just in our meeting today talked for, almost an hour about an infrastructure investment to support job creation through our opportunity fund, where I worked with the Dry Creek Water Association on a strategy to solve an infrastructure funding gap that they had. And now we're going to see, I think a lot of benefits in the Western River growth area because of that work. So I think jobs are the thing that we need more than anything. And I think it's work that I've done for my public career. And I think that we need even more focus from all of our elected officials on that work.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we're not taking any questions from the floor. If you have a question, raise your hand and someone will bring you a card and bring it up to the desk. The next question is regarding economic development. This question is for Mike. How do the commissioners currently interact for economic development with the Economic Development Council, port, and city governments? Are process or structural changes needed?
Great question. And so currently Clallam County is the largest funder, I believe, of the Clallam County Economic Development Council. And it is the entity that tries to find gaps that we have in our business community and recruit or create businesses to fill those gaps. And they've been doing, I think, really excellent work. We've been served by extremely well by their executive director, Colleen McAleer, who's announcing that she's retiring later this year, which is breaking my heart. They helped recruit a major employer to the Forks Industrial Park that is hopefully going to be coming online this year. And that's 50 good jobs in a very small town that is very economically disadvantaged. So the other thing I will say about that question is it's a great question about how do we work together? And one of the things that I proposed last year was we regularly had joint meetings with the Port of Port Angeles where we talk about economic development and infrastructure. We ended up having a joint meeting where we also invited the PUD. And my suggestion was this should be our quarterly meeting. We should do this every year, 3 or 4 times a year, because it was such a useful meeting to get a bunch of elected officials from all around the county together, really focused on economic development and infrastructure and strategy. And how are we moving these projects forward? And my suggestion was let's invite the cities when we have relevant topics to that city. Maybe one a year where we're talking about the east end of the county, one where we're talking about Port Angeles, maybe one talking about the west end. And so I think that kind of intergovernmental collaboration focuses our efforts, makes us work together, because often if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, then we're both advocating with the state or the federal government on different projects, and we're not getting either one.
I'll just talk about economic development. I think for decades, our economic development strategy has been, how do we attract the big box store, the big business, the big employer? How do we attract the savior? And what's been ignored is the talent and ingenuity and work ethic that we have right here in this county. Our public safety is the number one priority because people are sitting on the sidelines waiting, wondering if they can deploy their capital and their time, and if their investments can be protected. Will the county be a partner, or will they be an opponent? We need to focus on the talent that we have here to revive this county, to revive this economically depressed area, and to revive our economy. We had a paper mill. What happened? Everybody was blindsided by that. Why aren't we meeting with all of our top employers monthly, quarterly, whatever it takes, and saying, what are your issues? How can we help? How can we keep you here? How can we help you expand, instead of constantly trying to build infrastructure to bring somebody else here, hypothetically, to create another couple hundred jobs?
Can we have a?
We'll have a 30-second rebuttal.
So the very first meeting that led to our recompete application was that meeting. Clallam EDC organized a meeting just across the street. They have an office down here in Port Angeles, where we invited all of our major employers. And we sat them down and we said, what are the barriers? So we had a big whiteboard and we wrote a whole bunch of stuff on it and said, what are the things? Some of the barriers are political. Well, we're probably not gonna be able to do anything about that. But you mentioned this barrier about transportation. Let's write that up. And so that was the meeting that led to a lot of the strategic work that went into our recompete plan. Was, what do our employers need? And a lot of what they said was about the workforce. They need a workforce that's trained and ready to work. That's a big part of our recompete investment as well. So we did have that meeting. I was there. It was a great meeting.
Recompete is $40 million. It's not going to create that many jobs. The target is 900 jobs. That would be $40,000 per job. We're not going to get to 900. We're spending $10 million on wraparound services to provide childcare, to provide transportation. We already have free transportation. We're providing, we're giving $8 million to NODC. We're doing the barges. That may be a good thing. I don't know if we could contract that out cheaper. I'm not sure. Peninsula College is getting $7 million. You know what we're spending $250,000 on, less than 1%? That's small business loans. Why aren't we spending $5 million getting small businesses to employ folks, to get them off the ground and create jobs? Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be for Jake. This is from the audience. Do you believe MAT, medical assisted treatment, needs overhauled? Yes or no? And why?
I am not an expert on that. I do think I have concerns for the long-term implications of keeping someone on Suboxone and methadone indefinitely. The folks that are on Suboxone and methadone, I talked to them. Most of them have been on it for years and years and years, and they're not titrating off. It's a voluntary deal. They have a hard time getting off of it. The doctors don't bring them down on that. There are adverse side effects to that. It makes you more functional. I talked to the police chief Raleigh out in Forks and Greg Bellamy, the sheriff. All of them are proponents because this system decreases crime. It reduces overdose deaths because we can't keep people in jail more than 2 days anymore. So if they come in and they detox a little bit, they go out and hit the same concentration of drugs and they overdose. So we have a MOED program in the jail. I think that the long run, we're going to look back on this and think that it was like the opioid epidemic. It was like the smoking epidemic. I do think it needs to be overhauled, but I don't know how yet.
So medication-assisted treatment is science-based. It is well evidenced. It is well studied. Methadone clinics have been around since the 1970s. This is not new. This is not something fancy. This is just there's some new drugs that we've used like Suboxone and Vivitrol, but this is well evidenced science-based medicine that is another tool in the toolbox. And that's the important thing to understand. Not everybody needs to go and get a methadone prescription at the Jamestown Healing Center or at their clinic. It's one tool that and in my mind, we need as many tools as we can to combat the opioid epidemic. There are some people that will respond to talk therapy. That's great. There's some people that respond to different other interventions. And there's some people that respond really poorly to methadone. And the other thing I'll say is you can do it poorly. I think what we've seen from the Jamestown Healing Center is they're doing it really well. They're actually not overdosing. And I will say that I have, in my professional capacity, had people when I was on the board of the Olympic Community Clinic. We knew that there were prescribers that were over prescribing medication assisted treatment. Really starting people on a very high dose of methadone. We went through official channels and made those complaints and said, hey, we don't think this is proper. There's a system that is really closely regulated where that I think the system works, but so you can do it poorly. I think we have really strong providers that are doing what they can. They're using every tool in the toolbox. I think we should continue to do that. Again, this is science-based medicine. And I think that what we've seen, especially at the Jamestown Healing Center, has shown us that this is not something that we need fear-mongering about. This is something that is healing our community. And we are seeing, and I just want to make one last point, we went from the second highest overdose death rate per capita in the state to the 12th in the last few years. We are moving in the right direction.
Jake, I'll give you a few seconds to
Yes, thank you.
to rebut to that.
How long?
30 seconds.
Okay, our overdoses have come down from about 46 to 25. They're still triple what we were in 2008 or 2018, I'm sorry, which was 8. Okay, more than triple. They've come down not because of harm reduction. They've come down because we've had, like Mike said, great co-response programs like Operation Shielding Hope. They've come down because Rediscovery is coming out and helping people get straight to inpatient treatment from the jail. So it's not harm reduction. Our overdose rates are still way too high. That's like one person every 2 weeks. Come on, guys, it's not acceptable.
I just want to make a small correction. The Operation Shielding Hope is not a co-response program. It's a community paramedicine program that is post-overdose response. Co-response is when a behavioral health specialist sits in the same police car, goes out on calls with a police officer. So you have the law enforcement, that makes sure a scene is safe, and you have the behavioral health expertise that can do interventions that a law enforcement officer is just not trained for. When I was on the board of the Olympic Peninsula Community Clinic, we pioneered that in our community with the Port Angeles Police Department and the Clallam County Sheriff's Department. Operation Shielding Hope is an amazing intervention that I supported, but that it's not co-response, it's post-overdose response.
You want to know?
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mike. This is from Zoom. Standing by.
Oh, is it? It's right here. Is it? I'm sorry.
How are each candidate keeping underrepresented communities in mind on their plans? For example, Latinx, trans, and non-English speakers. How would you convince them to vote for any of you?
It's a great question. And what I would say is that's something that I think needs to be always thought about at every level of government. And sometimes we have blind spots. And I will just say that it's a great question. It's a great thing to always remember and think about what is the diverse, representation of your community and how are you making sure that your policies are, affecting everyone. This is, I think, very classic John Rawls philosophy of, if you were to be reborn and you had to re-roll the dice, would you do it? I'm a white man in modern America that has had a very blessed life. So it's always important to think about all of the broad spectrum of our community. One way that I did that as an elected official is in our recompete plan, we have a specific project to serve our underserved regions, to address kind of the places where we've had the hardest hit economics, like our rural areas, like tribal areas. And so we had specific investments to make sure that we were raising the capacity of those populations to be interacting in the the broader political and economic system, and to make sure that they had some agency and control over how they were spent. So I think philosophically, that's an example of how I did it. But I think it's always a good thing to remember. So I appreciate the question.
I want the endorsement of every single person in this county. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care about your gender or your identity. I want to represent you. And as I talk to folks from all over the county, we all care about the same issues. We keep trying to make it like we're different. It's us and them. It's not us and them. It's just us. We care about the same things. We want the same outcomes. I'm here to represent everyone on these local issues. Some of the underserved and forgotten folks are the ones living in Tumwater Creek. And it doesn't make sense because we're spending so much money on this problem, but they are swept under the rug into tents, soggy tents on the creek. They don't have a path out. It's not because they don't want a path out. They want a path out, but we haven't given them that stepping stone. They can't go to Serenity House. If they want to try to be clean, they can't go there because you can't use on campus, but right at the doorstep is just a drug haven of dealing and use right at the curb. They can't get clean there. They don't feel safe. We don't have transitional housing because we spend all our money on housing first, permanent supportive housing. We aren't connecting them at the harm reduction center to treatment pathways. There are so many responders in this community that are just sick of that. We're handing out the tools for their destruction and we're not getting them to treatment. Those are the underserved people in our community.
Thank you. Next question will be for Jake. This is regarding elections. Clallam County conducts our elections almost exclusively by mail. What steps can the board take to strengthen voter confidence locally? State your position on the integrity and security of the Clallam County Auditor's Office and their handling of our local elections.
I have not overseen elections or ballot counting. I trust that our auditor is doing a good job. I think we need more community involvement. I think that would create transparency. I know we have it. I know we have the ability for people to come in and watch it, but we need more of that. The public needs to be assured that their votes matter, that their votes count. And if there's any, if there's any black holes, if there's any hidden spots in the process, we need to address that. And I think the public can advise us on how to do that.
So I have a lot of faith in our voting system, and that's because I have overseen elections and certified them. Because I serve on the board in Clallam County that certifies our elections. And so I sit through the trainings, I sit through the meetings, I am engaged in those meetings, and I see the process. And what you see is a very professionalized process that has checks and balances at every step of the way, that ensures that people are not double voting or doing other things every step of the way, that takes into account all sorts of, at almost every election, we have a new issue where we have to go and find in the rules. And oh yes, the rules tell us how to operate in this situation. So I think we have very safe and secure elections. I think if people want to come to those meetings, it's not a bad use of your time. And you will see that there are professional people that know what they're doing, that are really concerned about the safety and integrity of our elections, and are concerned about voter intent and making sure that we count every ballot that every voter casts. And so, I think it's a great question. And the county is where that happens. Counties are a subdivision of state government. We run the elections for everyone. And so you can see that in action. You can come down to your county courthouse and watch ballots be counted during an election. We allow observers. That's what they're called. My grandma was actually an observer years ago. And so, you can see the ballots being counted. You can see the process of how how all the election staff runs through that whole situation. There's a live video stream of that room 24/7 during election season. So I have a lot of confidence in our election system, and I'm happy to participate in it on that board.
Thank you. Next question is for Mike. This is from the audience. When will telecom fiber no longer be 50% dark on the west end?
It's a great question about broadband. And so what Clallam County did, it was before I became a commissioner, that they put their hand in the air and went after funding for broadband expansion. And we're seeing that we actually got confirmation that at least one phase of the construction is complete as we're expanding it out towards the Joyce area. Our hope is eventually to kind of get to Lake Crescent and make that connection to the west end. Broadband is expensive to put in the ground, and we're not sure that it's even the best technology anymore. And so this is something where I think government sometimes moves slower than technology, and we need to always stop and reevaluate what's the right strategy. What the county has done in many cases is actually Starlink. Starlink works great out west. And so, yeah, I think we need to continue being a good partner. The PUD has actually become a really good partner in expanding that broadband access. They're the one that is working with the private sector to deliver that project for Clallam County right now, out in the Joyce area. And I think we also need to be open-minded about other technologies. What's the right technology that will be the best bang for the public's buck? When we electrified as a country, we did that last mile. It's very expensive, but obviously all of us can see how useful and obvious that was. Of course, everyone needs electricity. I think going forward in the future, we're going to have those same kind of conversations about broadband, but we don't want to get married to a technology that might change, that might not be the best bang for the public's dollar. And so I think we need more expansion. There are plenty of dark spots out west. I'm very aware of them, traveling all over the west end over the last few years and trying to have internet access. And we need to continue making those investments.
We do everything online. So it's important to be connected. It's important for the folks in rural areas. I agree with Mike. Starlink's great. I'm traveling all over the county, campaigning, meeting folks, listening, trying to learn. I recognize that I have a lot to learn. So I have Starlink Mini in my 05 Explorer, and it works great. I can listen to these guys at the VOCC, while I'm driving. I think it's important to note that whether or not we're admitting that we're late, we spent, I think it was $26 million recently for expansion of fiber. And when I ran the numbers, it came to be about $13,000 per connection. So that's like 10 years of Starlink plus the dish for people. I mean, so whether or not we're figuring out, oh yeah, we blew that 26 million, we could have offered people free Starlink for 10 years. It's hindsight, but we don't spend our money well. We don't look at the outcomes we need and figure out what's the most efficient way to get there. We look around and we say, what money is available? What grants can we get? And who can we throw it at to solve our problem?
Thank you. The next question comes from the audience. We'll start with Jake. What experience do you have with government from being elected to serving on government committees?
This is easy. 0. I am not a politician. I've never aspired to be a politician. I am an average person like all of you that looked up, looked around, and saw things that were not going right in my county. Affordability decreasing, public safety decreasing, economic development decreasing, homelessness and substance abuse increasing. And I spoke out to my county commissioners and I felt unseen, unheard, unrepresented. And I think that's why a lot of you are here today. We all care about the same issues. So I don't have experience in politics, in government. I've applied to be on a couple of boards with the County Homelessness Task Force. I told them that I was a dissenter when they asked why they should appoint me, because we need a variety of opinion. We really need a variety of opinion on our boards in county government, and we don't often have it. We often have a very homogeneous board with the same opinions, and we need some back and forth to get to the right answers for the people. But no, I have 0 public experience. Thank you.
So I'm not a career politician either. I was a career restaurateur. I operated a restaurant for 15 years, and my profession, my college training is I'm a concert pianist. That's what I am. I was pushed to kind of run for public office, which I did, and I grew to really enjoy it. I loved working with people. I loved being involved in policymaking, and so I was elected to Port Angeles City Council twice. I served 5 years, and then I was elected to the Board of Commissioners, where I have served the last 3.5 years of this term.
Thank you. Mike, we're moving on to public safety. The Shore Aquatic Center is being targeted as unsafe due to the shower vouchers. Do you support the voucher program, and why or why not?
Yes, I support the voucher program, and I'm a board member of the Shore Aquatic Center of the Williamsville Memorial Pool District, which is the Metropolitan Parks District. And what as a board member, I was really interested in what is the policy, because that's where the board lives. We live in policy land, not down at the staff level. So I'm really interested to make sure that we get the policy right, so that we have the right guardrails, so that we're not. I will just say, Shore Pool is not a social service agency. We're a pool. The intent of these shower vouchers is we have this public resource that's already funded, and we can offer this service basically at no cost. It really doesn't inconvenience or cost the pool district any money. And if we can ensure that it doesn't inconvenience the public, it's just a win-win. And so that was the intent of this program, was use the existing public resource that's already paid for, that's already in use, and use it for a useful service that people were asking for. That provides some sense of agency and cleanliness and personal safety and space to our unhoused neighbors, which I think is a useful thing. And so, yes, I support it. I do not think it makes the pool unsafe. This program operated for 18 months without most anyone knowing, because our staff implemented it. And it didn't really have any incidents in those 18 months. And so I think that the proof's in the pudding. This ran unnoticed and for 18 months without major incident. And I think it can continue to run that way. I use the pool on a regular basis, and I don't have any problem with it personally.
My wife's an ER doctor. She has had many situations where a family dog has attacked a child, and the story is always, it was always a friendly dog. There was never an issue. And she stitched those kids up, or she sent them to trauma surgery. So 18 months of no incidents is not an argument to pursue something that is just an obvious common sense public safety concern. The vouchers are being given out in Harm Reduction Health Center to people that are using drugs. So I know a lot of these folks. They're great. They're great when they're off. I talk to them all the time. When they go into the ER and they see my wife, it's a totally different story. So when we have an overlap of individuals that are using drugs, showering with our kids that are at their preschool swim class, that is a common sense public safety issue. I'm not quite sure why anybody can't see that. We have showers available. We have plenty of showers available in Port Angeles. This is a public safety issue. The biggest concern with this was that the public didn't even know. When I take my kids to swim lessons, I send them into showers to shower and come meet me up front. I didn't know this was going on, and most parents didn't either. So no, I'm against the vouchers. I think there's other ways that we can do this where it's not a public safety concern. People do deserve showers and dignity. I agree with that, and we can provide it in a different venue.
Thank you. Next question will be for Jake. What will you do to prevent Port Angeles from becoming a mirror image of Seattle?
I don't think we have enough space, first of all. We need to return harm reduction, the harm reduction center, to a 1-for-1 syringe exchange and Narcan. That's the first step. We need to enhance our public safety and enforce our ordinances so that we have clean and safe places for our public. We are already following in footsteps of Seattle. We're, look around. So that's what I would do. I would address public safety is number one. We need to enforce the ordinances that are on the books. Living outside and doing drugs in the forest is no longer an option. If you want to do that, you can go to another county. If you want to stay here and you want a path to shelter, not a permanent home, shelter. So give yourself a space where you can recover and pursue treatment and pursue workforce training. That's the path. If you don't want that, if you want to use drugs and live in the forest, it's no longer here.
So, I mean, I think there are ways that we will never be like Seattle. We are a small rural town, rural county, and I don't think so. The other thing I'll say is I don't view Seattle as some awful failed place. It's a growing, beautiful city with a beautiful waterfront that, I mean, I was just down there, I don't know when, a couple months back, and they have that new park and trail that goes all along the waterfront from the ferry. It's gorgeous. Seattle's a beautiful city. It has challenges. The I-5 corridor has challenges. King County was usually in the top 3 of overdose deaths per capita in our state. There's clearly some places that have challenges. There's also some really beautiful places. So I would say, Seattle is one of the fastest growing areas in Washington. Washington State is a net migration state. I think there's a lot of this rhetoric that we have to have something to hate and something to be angry about. And we get these targets. And I think that's just divisive. When I go to Seattle, me and my family have a wonderful time. We get to enjoy culture and the big city and restaurants and food and different attractions that we don't get on the peninsula. I think that's great. So I don't understand really, frankly, the substance of the question. I certainly don't want us to lose our rural character. I don't want us to lose our small town feel. I want us to grow organically and slowly and see us thicken up as a city and not just urbanize and become the next metropolis or something like that. But I certainly don't see Seattle as some, failed city. I just don't think that's accurate.
Thank you. So we have a few more questions here, candidates. Thanks for your endurance. The next question is a general question. What two things do you want to accomplish in the first year of your term, and how will that happen?
Great question. So, one of the things that I really want to see happen is more growth in community building out in Clallam Bay CQ. Clallam Bay CQ is a urban growth area, 2 small historic towns this beautiful little fishing village. And I've spent a lot of time out there these past few years. And we're working to revitalize their visitor center. So I'm working with a couple of community members who become board members. The person who used to run their visitor center passed away. Now it's just a bunch of volunteers. They don't have a full-time executive director. So I'm working with them to find funding to have a full-time executive director, probably through a lodging tax grant from the county, because they have hotels and resorts that are generating a lot of lodging tax. And so I want to see that become a seed for economic growth to grow in this small rural town that really is a gem that deserves. And what they've seen, I think, over the last few decades is they've been largely ignored by the overall political structure of Clallam County because they don't have a city council. They don't have anyone to really advocate for them. And so, I've been running community meetings out there every month for 2 years now, I think, and trying to just get that community ball rolling downhill. We have a new business owner that opened an amazing little pub right on the corner out there. And I want to use that as the opportunity to see what else can we have? Can we have more investment in the look? Can we have a facade improvement grant? Can we have some resources for community building and business development? So that's a big thing. And then the second big thing I will just say is we're in year 2 of 5 of the implementation of our recompete plan. I think it's showing incredible promise at improving our workforce, improving workforce development and training opportunities, and we're making big investments in our industry. I want to see that through, and I think there's a lot of work to do there.
Thank you.
Mike really has done a great job engaging West End and Clallam Bay CQ, and I really appreciate that. And he's out there all the time, so thank you for doing that. My 2 things would be, first of all, I have a passion for the public safety side of things, not just for the general public, but also for the folks that are living outside. So we need to clean up our streets, our creeks, our forests, our public areas, so that everybody feels safe, everybody feels protected. And that includes the people that are living outside right now. I want them to have a path to recovery, and many of them want that. And I think that's going to take, we really need to prioritize transitional housing and making our shelter attractive. We need to work with local employers because we have gaps in the workforce. We have gaps in the workforce that can be filled right now in hospitality, in restaurant, in the food service industry, in forestry, in construction. And these don't take a whole lot of training, but someone that could come out get into a treatment program, have shelter where they have a safe place to stay, and then move into an apprenticeship type program. And that could be even for waiting tables, which seems funny to have an apprenticeship program for waiting tables, but just a place that someone can come and say, you have 3 to 6 months to show up and prove yourself here, and then you will have a job. You can make 80 grand a year waiting tables here. I guess my time's up, so.
I just had something really quick.
Yes, 30-second rebuttal.
So I just want to say our small businesses are already kind of that first step of recovery for a lot of our people. When I was a downtown business owner here for 15 years, I hired people that were in recovery, that stumbled through recovery over and over and over. Sometimes I fired them. Sometimes they needed that accountability from their boss. Sometimes they needed support and a second chance. And so our small businesses are doing that. We actually have a very recovery positive community in many respects. A lot of business owners out there take a lot of chances on people and give them that chance to work, to build something, to rebuild their life that they've shattered, right? And so, I just want to give credit to our small business owners. They're doing a lot of that work.
I appreciate you doing that, Mike, and I agree. We just need more of it. I think the county could empower more of that. There's still a lot of folks in recovery that have a hard time getting a job because they have a felony on their record. The second thing that I would do is I would be working towards balancing the county budget. Thank you.
So thank you. We have time for another Zoom question. I'm going to combine these questions because they relate to the same thing. How is it that CC taxpayers are absorbing so much of the property tax that the Jamestown Clallam tribe does not pay? What is the long-term solution for some type of party program to the county? And also, do you support the Jamestown Clallam tribe federal wildlife refuges?
I think it's the
Is it
land
me first or-
transfers.
I'm not sure actually. Do you know who's on first?
Dick.
Okay.
Mhm.
And can you just repeat the first part of that question because I didn't quite understand it?
Sure. How is it that Clallam County taxpayers are absorbing so much of the property tax that the Jamestown Clallam tribe does not pay? What is the long-term solution for some type of, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading that.
Long-term.
Parity. What, for some type of parity program to the county?
Okay. So the Jamestown tribe, like anybody, can purchase land, and then they can petition to have it brought into tribal trust, and then it becomes a tax exempt situation. That has nothing to do with the county. The BIA makes that call. The county can petition the BIA and say, hey, this is how much it's going to take off the tax rolls, and this is how much it's going to affect our constituents. This is how much it has over time. Okay, so if we remove property from the tax rolls, we all pay more tax. It's not something that we get to make the call on. We can have input. This goes back to what I was saying, and this is a concern. What can we control? 50,000 acres of property have been taken out of the tax rolls in the last 5 years. That's 11% of our private property base. We have control over some of that. The commissioners started the conservation futures. That money that's a tax that takes money and conserves land in the county. Now, sometimes I get why we do that because we don't necessarily want farms to be turned into subdivisions everywhere, but the taxpayer is essentially bidding against itself for property, and that decreases affordability. So I think that we need to respond to the requests for trust transfer, and we need to make it very clear that it does impact the rest of the citizens.
So Clallam County taxpayers, especially property taxpayers, have been asked a lot over the last, decade or so. And I'm sympathetic. I'm one of them. I am a property tax owner, and I have seen my personal property taxes go up quite a bit. And most of that is because I will say the top 3 reasons. Number 1 are voters. Voters pass levies and bonds. Voters say yes, let's invest in our community. Let's invest in new schools. Let's invest in supporting our library system. Let's invest in supporting hospital. The taxpayers, the voters get to make that decision. And they have sided with mostly yeses, and that increases our tax burden. Secondarily, I think the amount of untaxable land is a very large number in our county specifically, but by far, the reason is because of Olympic National Park, Olympic National Forest, state-owned lands. Native tribes are not the major reason why we don't have taxable land. And if that were true, Jamestown is, I think, the smallest native landowner in our region. I'm not sure if Billy is larger than them or not. And that's because Jamestown didn't come with a reservation. They came with their own privately owned lands. And so as they're transferring land into trust, I think that's the context that we need to understand it. And then the third reason that the property tax burden is felt so heavily is the senior and disabled exemption. That is an incredibly impactful exemption to our property taxes. But who among us would say that we shouldn't protect seniors from being priced out of their homes? Who among us would say we shouldn't protect disabled people from being priced out of their homes? So those are huge impacts, and I'm very sympathetic. And then I also, do you want to just take another 30 seconds on the refuges? Because we neither of us answered that.
Right. Let's take 1 minute to answer about the, you want me to repeat the question?
The refuges.
Yeah.
The land transfer.
The transfer of the refuges and ownership of Jamestown.
Okay. Judge,
Do you want to
Can
repeat
you pull it up?
Oh. Mhm.
the protection on the adjust?
She restated it. So right here. Do you support?
Do you support the Jamestown Clallam Tribe Dungeness Wildlife Refuge and Protection Island transfers?
So that question has been asked to the Board of Commissioners. We haven't answered it yet. You might have read reporting about the Jefferson County Commissioners kind of going through that as well. So I would say that I understand the request and I'm not against the request, but in my mind, it would need to have some guardrails. It would need to have something that protects public access to the land very clearly in federal law and when whatever act was passed. And it would need to have something that protects access to things like, you know, some of the offshore activities that our residents are accustomed to doing in that area. So making sure that, you know, environmental protections are very explicitly retained to make sure that public access is very explicitly maintained. And I think that that is possible to do in federal legislation. It's difficult for me to say that I support a federal act without being able to read the act. And so that's why I've been kind of uncomfortable with this issue. I feel like we're kind of getting ahead. The second thing I'll say is, I think this is an issue where we as local officials should be really engaged with our federal representatives and say, you need to have some direct communication with our region. So I think a town hall with the Jamestown Clallam Tribe, Emily Randall, and maybe inviting our senators is exactly what our region needs so that we can really have that communication and relationship with our federal representatives, because it's at the end of the day, it's their decision. Sorry.
I agree. It's not the county's decision, but you know, I don't support the transfer. It's the people's land. It's being stewarded well. And I don't want to take any risk that we will not have access to that in the future. And I don't think there's any way to guarantee that. The tribe has not purchased this land. They're not asking for it to be transferred into trust because they purchased it. So no, I don't support that.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to the end of our questions. So now the candidates, you'll have 2 minutes to give a closing statement.
Me first,
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot of thoughtful questions in there. And if we have more, I'm sure we'll be happy to answer them via email. I really appreciate everyone's attendance. You know, politics is a team sport. We all have to, we have to show up. And I don't mean that as a partisan thing. People have to be involved. Local politics, in my experience being on the city council and the county commission, the vast majority of issues are not partisan. The vast majority of issues are about what's the best for our local community. And so we got to show up, we got to be involved, and I really appreciate the room being full is a show that we have an involved community, and I really do appreciate that. So I've been in public office, like I said, for about 8.5 years on the peninsula. I've been really focused on what's our long-term solutions. How do we not just attack the issue of the day? How do we get deeper than a headline? How do we work together and solve some of the big problems that we're facing? Because we do have a lot of big problems: substance use disorder, public safety, homelessness, housing costs, and the economy. And so, hopefully what you've seen tonight, number one, I'm not really a natural public speaker, but I am deeply involved. I'm deeply involved in the policy, in the issues, in the community. I've been a downtown business owner. I've been on a nonprofit board. I've been an elected official. I have a good understanding of the private sector, the nonprofit sector, the public sector, deep relationship with our community. And I hope that I've gained a vote or two tonight. But thanks for showing up, and thank you.
I got to stretch a little bit. Yeah, thank you for being here. I will say, Mike, on his website, you do show up, you do listen. I appreciate that as a District 3 resident. Thank you for doing that. In closing, I just have a few questions for you. Do you feel safer than you felt 4 years ago? Are your public spaces cleaner? Is your environment more protected? Do you have more neighbors that can afford to live here? As taxes have gone up, do you think that your return on investment has increased? The fundamental difference between Mike and me is this. Mike believes that government's the solution to our problems. I believe that our people are the solution to our problems. We have the talent, creativity, work ethic, and capital needed to transform Clallam County already here. I'm tired of hearing that the talent's left. It hasn't. We have exceptional people throughout the county asking this one simple question. If I risk my time and my resources and my capital, will my local government participate with me, partner with me, or will my local government be an obstacle? Government's role is to provide essential services and to empower community-led solutions. The people closest to the problems often know the solutions. And when citizens are empowered to participate in effective solutions, they show up because they care about their neighbors, they care about their community. That's how we will transform Clallam County, through the people who are already here. Instead, we've been told that the solution is more government, more spending, more grants, more money flowing through nonprofits, more of the same. If you're looking for change, if you're looking for common sense leadership that puts safety first and empowers community solutions, I'm asking for your vote tonight. I will focus on public safety as a foundation of economic growth, balancing the county's budget, and providing a future for our kids and grandkids to be able to afford to stay here. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
That concludes our forum for tonight. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you to Jake Seegers and Commissioner Mike Friend. Yeah.